Can everybody see? Excellent. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming.
Hear you. Oh my God. Welcome to session.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you, but I think your presentation is not appearing.
That's okay. The presentation will appear. Look, here we go. It's coming. It's coming. We're going to wait. Welcome everybody. My name's Andy. I spent 15 years working for a company called Dulux Paints. I spent 10 years in finance. I'm a chartered accountant and became the finance director of Dulux Paints in the UK. And I thought I kind of knew everything there was to know about finance business partnering. I thought that by the time I'd become a finance director, I'd kind of learned it all. I knew it all. I even trained my team in finance business partnering when I was finance director. But then after 10 years in finance, I moved and became sales director at Dulux. So now I'm running a large sales team, selling into large retailers over here. And let me tell you, I got a totally different perspective on what finance business partnering is all about. All of a sudden, I learned how to sell, and I was selling paint, but whether you're selling paint, flat screen TVs, food, whatever you're selling, the process is the same. And I realized that in finance, I was selling my ideas. So when I learned to sell properly, I realized, wow, I could have used those skills when I worked in finance to have sold my ideas about how to improve sales or reduce costs or improve margins. And secondly, all of a sudden I had finance partnering me. My old finance team, they were now partnering me. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I found that they were far too challenging. They didn't really understand my business. They didn't really understand the value drivers. They understood the outcomes of success that they could see in the P&L, balance sheet or cash flow. But my finance team didn't properly understand the value drivers of the organization. They weren't commercial enough. They didn't spend enough time with me. And they spent too much time telling me what I should do rather than helping me overcome my problems. And I only had myself to blame because they were my team. And it really made me think, wow, there's a different way of doing this. There must be a different way of doing this. One of the things I really noticed was how finance present, because I never really thought about it when I was the finance presenter, but as soon as I had finance presenting to me as the sales director, you know, I really noticed that there's a real problem in how we present information and take people through the story behind the numbers. So today I'm going to show you how you can take any dull, boring finance report, table of numbers, you can take any table of numbers and in just 10 minutes, you can turn it into a dashboard that's engaging, interesting and fun. We're not going to take away the detail. We're not going to take away the tables of numbers. We're just going to start our presentation with a dashboard that grabs people's attentions and gives them the most important key messages. I'm going to show you how to do that. Before I do, I just want to show you a typical kind of finance report that you're probably used to seeing and producing, and just give you a few things, you know, that maybe we want to think about when we do our next report. So first of all, most finance reports tend to start with a title that's pretty dull and boring, like this, period 6 financials. Let me tell you, this is one of the most boring titles you can have. If you really want to send your audience to sleep, you'd put maybe budget 2021. That would be quite boring as well. It's not just finance that do this, by the way. It's sales, say things like sales forecast or marketing updates. The thing is, in the professional presentation game, the top left-hand corner is prime real estate. That's like it's like the most important part of the screen. We waste it with something dull and boring like period 6 financials. So after today, I never want you to waste the title of your PowerPoint presentation. I want you to deliver your key message. Okay, what's the first thing we're going to put on our finance slide? What's the first thing? We're going to have a table of numbers. We love tables of numbers in finance, don't we? So we're going to have a nice table of numbers there. We've got actual versus budget versus last year. Now, when I worked in marketing, I learned this. I spent 3 years working in sales, and then I spent 2 years working in sales and marketing together. And what I learned was the worst way to bring numbers to life, is to use a table of numbers. The worst way is to use a table of numbers. The best way is to take one number and make it big. Now there's 75 numbers in this table of numbers, so we've just broken marketing's rule on how to bring numbers to life 75 times. Okay, now that's the period. We've got 75 numbers, but we're not done there. If we've got the period, what else do we need? We need year to date. There we go, 150 numbers. We've just broken marketing's rule on how to bring numbers to life 150 times. If we've got the period, if we've got year to date, what else do we need? Well, we need the full year. So now we've got 225 numbers. Remember, marketing's rule on how to bring numbers to life is take one number and make it big. We've just broken marketing's rule 225 times. And we're not done, are we? Because, okay, we've got our table of numbers, but we can't just do that. We know we've also got to give some narrative. So what do? I know, we're make the table smaller and we'll put in some bullet points. And we've now made that table so small you can hardly see it, but don't worry about that. And our bullet points. Oh, I hate bullet points anyway, but I really hate the narrative that we tend to write in finance because really it doesn't really tell us much. And we tend to use these words like phasing, one-offs and accruals. And I think so often our narrative, this is what I realized when I started to work in sales, was I realized that the narrative that my finance team were giving me were just describing the accounting adjustments behind the numbers. I wasn't getting enough commerciality behind it. Now imagine the Google homepage for a second. What does the Google homepage have a lot of? You've got it, white space. But in finance, we see white space. We think, wow, we've got to fill it. So what comes next on our slide? Ta-da! A few graphs and charts. Good. And we look at the graphs and charts and we think, okay, that's good. But the key messages aren't really standing out. So what do we do? What do we do when the key messages aren't really standing out? I know. We'll circle them. Oh. Ta-da! We'll circle them. Perfect. Our messages are standing out now. See, we're stood there, we're thinking, yeah, this is great. As finance, we're thinking this PowerPoint presentation looks brilliant. We're thinking this is great, but our audience, this is what our audience are thinking. This is what our audience are thinking. And this is what I realized when I started to work in finance, because when I started to work in sales, I mean, because this is how I felt when I became the sales director, when finance were presenting to me. So for about a year and a half, I presented every month to the board as the finance director. I presented slides that looked like the slides I've just shown you. And then after 18 months, I became the sales director. And now my old finance team are presenting those slides back to me. The new finance director is presenting those same slides that I produced and that I presented that many times. And I sat there and that's how I was feeling. And I thought, wow, if I'm feeling like that and I was the finance director just a few weeks ago, how's everybody else feeling? And I just realized it was way too much. Okay, so what can we do about it? Luckily, there's a couple of things we can do that very quickly can just transform that table of numbers into something that's going to be much more engaging, interesting, and fun. Now, don't get me wrong, these kind of reports and presentations, there's nothing wrong with them. I'm not saying stop doing them. They're great as a reference document. They're really important for internal controls, and they're really important for the machine of finance. You know, we need standard reports, we need them coming out at a set time, blah, 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 all of that. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these reports. They're great for what they're great for. The thing is, these kind of reports are terrible when it comes to communicating key messages, terrible when it comes to engaging your audience, and terrible when it comes to influencing decisions. It's just the wrong tool to do those things. Sure, if you want a reference document, if you want something for internal controls, if you need the machine of finance to be efficient, absolutely have these reports. If you need to communicate key messages, if you need to engage your audience, and if you want to influence decisions, these reports might be brilliant input to that, but they're in no way the kind of thing you want to be using as a finance business partner looking to influence. These kind of reports are used by accountants. Now, the reality is, as finance business partners, we're always going to wear an accountant's hat, and then we're going to wear the finance business partner hat at the same time. So we're always going to have that situation where we have to do both. What's important, and that's fine, what's important is that when we're being an accountant, we pick up the toolbox that's got the tools in it for being an accountant. And when we're going to be a finance business partner, we pick up the toolbox for finance business partner tools. The big problem I think we've got globally in finance is that we're using accountants' tools to try and be a finance business partner. And it gets us so far, but it doesn't get us all the way there. Okay, this is the Brexit bus. Some of you would have heard a lot about Brexit in the past. This is the reason why, probably the reason why the UK might be leaving Europe. And on this bus is everything we need to know about bringing numbers to life. They've taken one number, they've made it big. Okay, they made the number up. We'll forget about this for the purposes of this, because I'm not saying I agree with this. What I'm saying is, on this bus is everything we need to know about bringing numbers to life and transforming a dull, boring table of numbers into something much more interesting, engaging and fun. They've done a couple of clever things here. They've taken a big number, they've taken one number, they've made it big. They've then compared it to the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, which people in the UK love. It's a brilliant service and they're doing a fantastic job right now. The people behind this bus, they picked that because they know that in this country we feel very deeply, we love the NHS. So they've given us a big number to talk to our head, 350 million a week, that's a big number. And then they've talked to our heart by saying, let's fund our NHS instead. And then they've given us a call to action, vote leave. And they've given us another one, let's take back control. Barack Obama did the same when he said, yes, we can. There was actually a Remain bus in the UK. This is the Remain bus. Not quite as good. And here's the irony. What does the Remain bus have on it that the Leave bus doesn't have on it? Here we go, the two together. What does the Remain bus have on it? Sorry, what does the Leave bus have on it that the Remain bus doesn't? A number. And this is the great irony. Too many numbers turns people off. One number used well is incredibly powerful. And this number was used so well in the UK that it was instrumental in influencing a country to vote to leave the EU. Not the only reason, but instrumental. So here, what I'm saying is this kind of stuff is too detailed to be a world-class finance business partner. Sure, you can be an okay finance business partner using reports like this. Of course, you can be okay. You guys are on this webinar, guessing because you don't just want to be okay, you want to be great. Okay, this stuff is way too detailed to get you to the kind of levels that you want to get to. At the same time, this is way too high level. We can't just in finance pick one number, make it big, compare it to something that people care about and think that we're going to influence people. That's too high level. What we're looking for is this. How do we take the principles from the Brexit bus, apply them to our table of numbers and get something that's just right? And here's the important thing. What's just right depends on the situation. There's no right answer here. What's just right depends on the context. It depends on your audience. Some audience people want a bit more high level. Other audience members will prefer a little bit more detailed. So just right is going to be different depending on the audience. Let me be clear on one thing though. Almost never is the standard table of numbers the right answer. I always like to start high level with a one pager and then take people through the detail. And what I want to show you today is the one pager to put in front of all of the detail that's going to deliver you high quality messages. It's going to engage your audience, it's going to interest them, and it's also going to be a little bit of fun and light-hearted rather than just table after table after table. But the detail will still always be there. Okay, so here's the thing. We want to stop this happening. This is the most dangerous thing that happens in my experience as a finance business partner. And I'm talking from my experience of being partnered by finance. So many times I sat there and I had the question and I was thinking, what the hell are they talking about? And I just thought, I can't be bothered to ask. And bear in mind, that's after being the finance director. I still didn't understand necessarily what the finance team were saying. The thing about this is it's hidden. You know, you don't realize that people are doing this. The questions that people ask you, they're not the problem. If people ask you a question in a meeting, That's fine, that's easy because you've got the opportunity to answer them. The problem in my experience is that many people don't actually ask the questions that they have, and they just go away confused and think, oh, who cares? So what can we do? Here we go. This is our standard finance report. How can we turn it into something more interesting, engaging, and fun? So let's start with data, information, or insight. My first question to you is, are you dealing in data, information, or insight? So we're going to flip through a video now. So you're going to get still me again, and probably wearing the same jumper too. But you get 5 minutes of a video where I want explaining the difference between data, information, and insights, and why they're so critical to you becoming a better finance business partner. This is Insight Mountain, and I used it to totally transform my finance career. Data answers the question what, information answers the question why, and insight answers the questions, so what? What next? How could we improve? And there are 3 types of data. We start with raw data, maybe a CSV download into Excel. Then we process it and turn it into structured data, maybe a table of numbers. And then we visualize it into charts and graphs. The thing is, processed data is still data, and visualized data is still data. The big mistake I made when I worked in finance was I thought that structured data made it information, and by turning it into a graph or chart, made it insight. So if data answers the question what, information answers the question why. But not some crappy why like phasing, accruals, or one-offs. We want a root commercial driver. And there are 2 types of why: surface-wise and root cause drivers. Most finance reports and presentations only get as far as surface causes. And this is what I call the systems or career ceiling. The thing is, we can get this far up Insight Mountain by looking into the system. We can spot a variance and drill down to a customer or product group. But that's where it ends. So if the system gets us this far up Insight Mountain, what gets us to the top? Relationships. And here's the thing. It's not our job to answer the question, so what? It's our job to ask it. This is important because one of the questions I'm asked the most is, will robots take my job in the finance revolution? And I think that depends on whether you're dealing in data, information, or insights. If you're only telling people what happened and the surface whys, then I think probably yes, robots will take your job. Robots will be able to tell us what happened last month. They'll be able to take the raw data, process it, and visualize it. Robots will dig into the system and they'll show us the surface causes. They might even get close to root causes, depending on how many data sources they can pull from. And with 5G and the Internet of Things, that will be a lot of sources. But it will be a long time before the robots are answering the question, so what? So if you want to future-proof your career, you'll want to move up Insight Mountain. So let's say we work for a company selling tech gadgets and sales are 4% below last year. I can dive into the system and see that it's due to Amazon, one of our biggest customers. I go deeper and find out it's because we sold less iPads this year. I go deeper still and find out it's due to the 120 gigabyte iPad mini. That's 84% of the variance to last year. Boom, insight. Maybe not. This is still a surface why. I want the commercial driver. I want to know why we sold less iPad minis. So to burst through the system ceiling and get to the commercial drivers, you're going to need to talk to people. And I also call the system ceiling the career ceiling. Early in our career, we were promoted based on our ability to take raw data, process it, visualize it, and find out surface causes. But then that stops working and our career hits the ceiling. A big mistake a lot of people make is to do even more analysis and create even more reports. But it doesn't help. The answer is to put away your computer and build relationships. And this is important because there's a direct correlation between the amount of money you earn and which one of those questions you're answering. And let's be clear, the big jobs with the big bucks are for the people answering the question why and so what, not the people answering the question what. So which question do you want to answer? So to recap, data answers the question what, information answers the question why, and insight answers the questions so what? What next? How could we improve? And here's the big question. How do we turn the what into the so what? So to do that, let's start with the big insight mistakes that most people make. Here we go. So data answers the question what, and in finance we are brilliant at this. What happened last month? What do we think will happen next month or next quarter with a forecast? Just because something is in the future doesn't mean that it's any more than data. If something's just telling you what's happened, it's data. Even if that what is a brilliant chart, graph, it might look beautiful. Doesn't matter how great it looks. If it's only asking the question what, it's data. I think a lot of the I don't think you need Tableau or any special data analysis, data visualization tool specifically to be a great finance business partner. Don't get me wrong, it helps, but being great at data visualization on its own is not going to make you a great finance business partner because you don't need many visualization tools to influence people. The main problem is that we spend a load of time in finance visualizing the what. I think we spend 10 times too much time in finance visualizing the what. Now, the what is okay, but what I really want to know is why. Information answers the question why, but not some rubbish why like phasing, accruals, or one-offs. I don't want a why that's an accounting adjustment. I want a why that's a commercial driver. I want sales are down because a competitor launched a product that's equally as good at a lower price point and consumers have switched. You know, that's a genuine commercial reason why sales are down. I don't want something like sales are down because we sold less or sales are down because a retailer destocked. I want to understand a little bit more behind that. Well, why did the retailer destock? You know, what's going on behind that? So you'll be a much, much, much better business partner, loads better, when you switch out from describing accounting adjustments so much and spend more time on the root causes, the root cause why. But really the real value comes in this so what. So what? Great finance business partners, this is what great finance leaders do, finance business partners, leaders, this is what they do. They tell people what happens, then very quickly they tell them why, the commercial driver why, and then even then they move straight into so what. And in the so what box, we're talking about what does it mean, what next, how are we going to fix this problem, what are the potential options, what are the potential solutions. And so what I want you to leave today with in your head is this what, why, so what, why, so what, why, so what. Every time you do a report, every time you talk to somebody, every time you're doing anything really, think to yourself, I want to formulate all of my messages with a what, a why, and a so what. You've then got the beginning, the middle, and end of your story. Okay, so how do we take Insight Mountain, how do we take the Brexit bus, and between them, how do we bring those together and present our numbers in a different way? So let's assume that I'm going to present to you, I'm the finance director of a training company, a company that sells seats on training programs. And let's assume that I'm going to present to you the performance for the financial year. And here's how we could apply those the Brexit bus and Insight Mountain to a finance report and do something a little bit different. So how can we continue the growth into 2019? How can we continue the growth into 2019? We've had a great year so far. Let me tell you the story behind last year. First of all, bookings are up 8,000 year on year. We've sold 8,000 extra seats. Last year, we sold 66,000 seats. This year, 74,000 seats. So my son's just come in. He's going out. Arch. I'm just doing a call. You've got to go out. Shut the door. Why is that? Due to a new marketing campaign. Notice I'm not talking about a phasing, accruals, or one-offs. I'm talking about due to a new marketing campaign. And then I'm telling you that that's £4 million of extra sales versus last year. Very specifically here, I'm not leading with sales up £4 million year on year. I'm leading with bookings being up 8,000 year on year. I'm leading with a commercial driver, something that my audience are going to think, oh yeah, I get that. We've sold 8,000 extra bookings. I get that. Okay, then I've got the detailed numbers. Then I've got the reason why, the marketing campaign, and then I've got the financial outcome last. And this is way, way more engaging for your non-finance colleagues. Okay, bookings are up 8,000 year on year. Let's have a look at price per unit. The price per unit is down £60 per head. We've sold each seat at £60 less year on year. Why is that? Well, that's part of promotions and discounts we've given as part of the marketing campaign. What does that mean for margin? That's 2% less margin, which in pound note terms is £0.6 million, which is in effect the amount of money we've invested in promotions. So what we see is that the top line, the bookings are going well. The price per head has gone down slightly, so our margin is down slightly. The good news is profit's up £1 million year on year, and that's after marketing investment of 0.2 million, which is a 3 times return on investment. Okay, so what? So what? Now, interestingly here, if we think about Insight Mountain, I've just told you that 8,000 bookings, we're 8,000 bookings up year on year due to a new marketing campaign. So in terms of Insight Mountain, I've just told you what, and I've just told you why. I've told you what happened, bookings are up. I've told you why they're up, it's due to a new marketing campaign. And I've told you another what, which is it's £4 million up. So I've told you the what, and I've told you a commercial why. Now, what's missing? At the top of Insight Mountain is so what. So the third box is so what. And to do so what, I'm going to pose some questions. Number 1, how can we maintain the bookings growth? Number 2, how can we recover margin to 2017 levels? And number 3, could we invest more in marketing? And I pose these as questions, not statements. Questions are way, way more influential than statements, loads more. Pose the questions and then have 5, 6, something like that, slides afterwards with a bit more detail on, maybe a few tables, maybe a few graphs and a few charts with some material on that answers those questions. Sure, people might want a deep dive into the bookings year on year. They might want to understand the price year on year. They might want to understand the profit year on year. Absolutely fine to explain that to people, but that's not finance business partnering. Explaining what happened last year, even in great detail to people, is not business partnering. What finance business partnering is posing 3 commercial forward-looking questions into a group of people and facilitating a conversation with them to help answer those questions. That's your job as a finance business partner. And when you start to shift the focus away from what happened last month or away from the forecast and much more into how do we answer some of these more strategic commercial questions, that's when you're going to be able to start adding significantly more value into your organization. So this is where we started. This is a typical report that an accountant would give. There's nothing wrong with it. It's really important that we do this, and many of us will need to produce these reports with our accountant's hat on. And all I say to you is do these and keep them for finance. These are reports that have been designed by finance for finance. They're great for finance. They're not so great for outside of finance. Instead, remember, on the Brexit bus, you've got everything you need to transform any presentation into any table of numbers into something interesting, engaging, and fun. Remember these 2 principles. Number 1, take numbers and make them big, make them stand out. And number 2, compare to something that people love. Compare to something, relate them to something that people care about, whatever that is in your context. Imagine for a second. Actually, I'll just run through this as well because we're just launching a Middle East Finance Business Partner Development Program. So what you've just seen from me live and what you've seen in the videos, we've got a 3-month program covering all of this in loads more detail, all presented by me, Andrew Jepson, a couple of other guys. We go through that in a second. And what you get is 7 on-demand video lessons. So you just saw a very short clip from a video lesson. Those 7 on-demand video lessons are in fact 7 hours worth of videos of me talking about my experiences, the principles, the tools, and you get to start that immediately. After that, you then get 9 live virtual workshops, and the on-demand video lesson give you the principles and tools. In the live virtual workshops, we then show you how do you apply those tools specifically to add not a little bit of value, but huge value in your organization. And we're going to run those every Saturday, 6 p.m. Dubai time. and we're going to start on Saturday, the 9th of May. We're going to link from this with some more details. So if that's something you're interested in doing, then you can always consider doing that as well. And if you do join us, this is who you'll hear from. You hear from me, Andrew Jackson, Ian Jewson, and Mohammed Al-Rubi from Dubai will join us as a guest speaker and help us out as well. And I just want to finish on this. And forget what's on the bus for a second. And just imagine this. This bus was very, very influential in the UK. Incredibly influential in the UK. Incredibly. Imagine if finance had done that bus. Imagine if finance had designed that bus. What would we have put on it? We'd have probably put a table of numbers on it, and the UK would probably still be in the EU. So on that note, I'd like to say thanks very much for your time. Thanks very much for your time, guys. And if anyone wants to connect and ask me any specific questions, feel free to. And yeah, stay safe. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Andy. If anyone has any question, they can just leave the question in the chat box.
Yeah.
So Andy, which visualization tools you will suggest for to use as a visualization tool for the reporting?
Sorry, say that again.
Which visualization tools or reporting tools you suggest for the finance professionals to use in their reporting to make such a high level of insights?
So everything that I showed you, I used in PowerPoint, directly into PowerPoint. I actually used Keynote, but Keynote, PowerPoint. I actually think to be a great finance business partner, you don't need any fancy software really, because it's about taking a couple of key messages and making them meaningful. And a lot of the flashy software looks good, but often when I see finance reports that finance people have done with that software, when I compare it to Insight Mountain, I think you've done a great job of explaining the what, and it looks beautiful with loads of visualizations. But if it's not telling me why, and if it's not posing the question so what, then it's missing out on so much. And I think we just focus a bit too much time on the tech and the visualization of the numbers, and we don't spend quite enough time in thinking about, okay, well, how do we then actually make all of that meaningful for people and not bamboozle them with way too much.
Right.
Any other questions?
I think, thank you. It was a great session. You see the comments.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Okay, I think thank you very much, Andy, for such a great presentation and regarding the reporting and how to make it very insightful in such a short period and such a short time. So thank you very much, and thank you all the audience. We will be back tomorrow with our another session as per our agenda. And thank you everyone. Thank you very much, and stay safe.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Mohammed Nishan. See you tomorrow, inshallah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. That was great.
Thank you, Andy. That was great.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Mohammed. Appreciate. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Great presentation. Good insight. Thank you very much. Bye. Good boy.